Robbed Childhood. Chapter 10. Revive. I saw the value of being true to myself. By that time, just like how success can only be genuinely rejoiced to when we work hard for it, I realized that a true friendship is formed not by always sharing the same interests. I took the initiative to talk to the friends I recently cut ties with. At that time, I felt like I had to. My main intention was not to relive the vibe of our friendship. I wanted us to have proper closure and, if possible, maybe we could be friends again. First, I texted the friend who stole my output last time. She agreed to meet. Even though I was nervous and was afraid of what might happen, I didn't pull back from my goal. For the first few minutes, neither of us talked, so it was very awkward. I took the courage to start a conversation. I hope you realized that what you did was bad. I kept stuttering, but I managed to finish the sentence. I'm really sorry. I couldn't bring myself to ask for help. I felt like my heart was sinking as she opened up. She told me that the day that we met, her mother kept on pestering her because of her grades. Her mother had the standard that all of her grades must be in the line of 9. So she had to join in different competitions in and out of school, study every day to ace the exams and her quizzes, and do everything to prove to her teachers that she deserves the highest grade just to reach her mother's standards. She wasn't allowed to hang out with just anyone. Her mother knew that I was a consistent honor student in grade school, so I was one of the few friends she was allowed to be with. The day I invited her to meet up was the card day of their school. Before we reached the cafe, her mother kept calling her because she saw the 83 on the report card. Out of all the high grades, even the rarely given grade, 99 to 100, the only thing she saw was the low grade. But why me? I said in a low voice. She lowered her head and turned to me. Do you even know the feeling of always being compared from other kids? She paused, and words like, I wish you were as smart as her. I wish you were as strong as him. I wish you were as friendly as her. I wish you weren't a crybaby like her. They even compare me to strangers. I wish you were as beautiful as her. I wish you were as tall as her. Worse is, she has her way to make me guilty once I confront her about it. I tried my best to pull out any word of comfort from my mouth, but I couldn't. She kept on crying. I didn't know what to do. Should I embrace her? Or what? I just stared at her. After gathering myself, I sat closer to her and hugged her tightly. Just let it out, I'll listen. Mother said it was for my own good. It's for my own future. But you know what? All my life, I always felt like I'm just a necessity in her eyes. I never heard words like, I am proud of you, unless I am the winner, the top of everything. When I tried to make friends, she would always treat them badly as if they were my competitors. She considers everything a competition. Her words were a bit muffled, but from the tone of her voice, I somehow felt her pain and eventually broke down in tears. We stayed there for another few hours. We just sat there in silence. After she calmed down, she turned to me. I'm really, really sorry. I was so desperate. This may seem just another excuse to you, but I want you to know I'm sincerely sorry. I know I should have just asked you to help me and not steal the output you worked hard for. You see, ever since my mother saw a post about your awards in grade school graduation, she was always comparing me with you. The times I fail in any of my schoolworks, she would always say, just why can't you be like her? I knew how much that project could impact your grades. For once, I wanted to prove her that I can be better than you. I let out a sigh and looked at her. I'd be honest, I actually hated you. That project was also important for me, but I have already forgiven you even before you could ask for it. I just really wanted you to be honest with me. I am not a good comforter nor an advisor. I don't know how to put my feelings in words, but I can always listen. I'm just one call away. One call away. Simultaneously, we sang Charlie Puth's song, One Call Away. We burst out laughing. That day, I went home with a wide smile painted in my face. After a few weeks, I decided to reach out to the couple friend. I was so nervous. I know my best friend. He has a very high pride. It'll be too hard to get them to even unblock me on their social media accounts, let alone meeting up. It took them a few days to finally agree seeing me. They chose the time and place to meet. I was nervous, but at the same time, I was so excited to see them again. It's been a long time since our last hangout. I actually missed them. So, I went there ahead of time. It was already past the planned time, but they still weren't there. I thought that maybe they're just coming late. I patiently waited. Hours passed, but they still didn't arrive. I kept on texting them, they never replied. I kept on calling them, but they never answered. They never showed up. It was getting dark, so I just headed home. I checked my phone to check their social media accounts, but I was still blocked. I held disappointment for the next few days. I even began blaming myself again. If only I didn't take out my frustrations to them, maybe by now, we are still enjoying each other's company. If only those things never happened, and so on. At that time, one of my classmates noticed that I was feeling down. She approached me. She told me jokes that are too corny for me to handle. She kept saying nonsense. But in fairness, she managed to make me smile. That simple gesture alone made me appreciate her more. As too many things were running in my mind at that time, I decided to open up to her. After that day, I started being more open with my classmates. I learned to say no to things that I didn't feel like doing. I learned to disagree to something I didn't believe in. I gradually showed my real self, voiced out my opinions, expressed my feelings, and shared my interests and passion. Chapter 11. Priorities. Months passed and I saw myself in a circle where I didn't feel the need to change myself to fit in. They were always there whether I need them or not. By time, I was becoming more and more open and expressive. Reaching the 9th grade, I decided to join the school publication. Fortunately, some of my close friends were also interested to join the tryouts. My happiness and excitement were overflowing. For a whole week, the school invited different speakers to orient us and prepare for the upcoming campus journalism competitions. Day by day, I felt the joyous feeling as if I got back something that I lost along the way. After that week, we were tasked to write articles for the school publication. I really missed myself being that dedicated. The Division Schools Press Conference, DSPC, was nearing. After the flag ceremony, as I was entering the faculty office, I met the editorial-in-chief, EIC. She told me that I would be joining the conference as a science writer. I was so happy at first. But just after a few minutes, I had several self-doubts. I felt that I was taking things too fast. I was scared that I'd just be disappointed again. It has been too long since I last joined campus journalism. My mind was overflowing with uncertainties. But at the end, I still took the opportunity. The conference came. Thankfully, the university was the host school, so I was less nervous. At the first day, I went to school early. I wanted to drop by our classroom and see my friends first. At that time, the school was celebrating a festival. It is an event done annually to showcase the skills of the students in different aspects, primarily in vocational arts and agriculture. After a few hours chatting with my friends, I went to the main venue. There, I spotted my best friend, May, who was also representing her new school. I also spotted my elementary teacher, my former school paper advisor, with the rest of the publication staff of my old school. I was so happy. It's been a long time since I saw them. We chatted for a while at one corner. Later that day, it was time for the contest proper. I gave all my best. Though my hands were shaking and I was palpitating all throughout the writing time, I still managed to finish my contest piece and left the hall with a smile. Leaving the main venue, my whole body was shaking, my hands were trembling, my heart was beating so fast to the point that I was already hyperventilating. I sat down on a bench in the university athletic oval. After a few minutes, I calmed down. It's been a long time since I last felt that level of nervousness and excitement. I whispered to myself. I wasn't expecting anything at that time. I was pretty sure I won't win. So, I didn't attend the awarding. I was alone at the boarding house as my siblings were busy with their stuffs. I was laying on my bed while browsing my Facebook feed when suddenly, I received a message from my SPA. It was a picture of a certificate of recognition for third place with my name written on it. I carried myself out of the bed. I jumped all around that I almost lost grip of my phone. I was very grateful. I dressed myself up and went straight to school, not where the awarding is being held, but to the school garden where some of my friends were conducting their research. I wanted to share the news and celebrate with them. A few months after was the scheduled coaching of delegates for the upcoming RSPC. During those times, my sister passed the board exam and officially became an agriculturist. My siblings planned a gratitude lunch. But sadly for me, I had to attend my coaching sessions. We tried adjusting, but me and my eldest sister's schedule just couldn't match. I ended up not attending the get-together. The whole family was there except for me and my eldest brother, who has already settled down with his own family at Vizcaya. Even my dad, who seldom joins us, was able to attend. After the coaching sessions, I went home early, hoping that I may still be able to catch up. But when I checked the time, it was already past 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They must have already left the restaurant. So, I just went home. Later that day, my sister posted their pictures. For a moment, I wished that I was also there. As I zoomed in to check the food, almost all were my favorites. It seemed like they didn't even eat all of it. Luckily, they brought home some leftovers for me. On a serious note, I had the feeling of both regret and guilt. Being an official agriculturist, it is one of the biggest breakthroughs of my sister. And I wasn't even there for the simplest act of joining the celebration by having lunch at a restaurant. Even though we could say that I can still celebrate it with her at home, there is still a big difference of not being able to attend a gratitude lunch with the family. Also, we didn't even do much at the coaching session that day. If only I was allowed to just skip, I may have been there for the family get-together. I was reminded of how I almost missed my brother's wedding. The available schedule for civil wedding in the municipal hall happened to be a weekday. Though the school was celebrating intramurals and we were supposed to have lost of free time, our teachers required many project outputs and performances to finish while they are busy assisting the school athletes. We were so busy that I couldn't even afford to grab a snack from the school canteen, as I didn't want to waste time. While I was busy with my schoolworks, the wedding was already being held. I felt so sad. At some point, I wanted to cry, but then again, I had lots of work to do and I didn't want to be a burden for my classmates. Thankfully, after several minutes of no talk, just work, the task leader permitted us to take a break. I grabbed my phone and chatted my sister. I asked if the ceremony was done already, and if it is, where were they? She instantly replied that they were in a nearby restaurant. Not wanting to miss such a big life event, I waited for the right time and escaped. I did my best not to be noticed by the task leader and went straight to the said restaurant. I may have missed the scene of them reciting their vows, but I was thankful that I was still able to witness the whole family happily dining together with the newlyweds. I didn't eat with them as I was full. Honestly, it was because I had to go back quickly. Even though I was there briefly, I still managed to take group photos with them. I sneaked my way back to the classroom. Luckily, the restaurant was not far from my school. I wasn't gone for long, so the task leader knew nothing about it. That day, I shared what happened to my clothes. Friends, if ever you come across our pictures, don't be surprised if you see me wearing my school ID. Anyway, going back to my journalism journey. After the preparations for RSPC, a few weeks after, me, our 2 SPAs, and 3 of my schoolmates who also won at the division level, traveled to Rizal, Kalinga, the host division of the conference. There was not enough space in the schools of the division to accommodate all delegates, so we ended up staying in the evacuation center. We didn't have the chance to go around and explore because the weather wasn't fine when we arrived. It was raining hard. We just stayed in the evacuation center. The only time we went out was when it's time to eat or it's time for the competitions. The day of the contest proper. As forgetful as I am, I forgot to bring the so-called most important weapon of a journalist, my pen. I was very lucky that my schoolmate, 8 photojournalist, had an extra pen with her. I kept on biting my lips as we entered the contest room. I took deep breaths and urged myself to focus. Fortunately, I was able to finish my piece on time. I left the contest hall and went to look for my SPAs. I stayed with them as we were waiting for my schoolmates to finish. That night, a message was sent to the group of SPAs from our division. "Congratulations, science writer Kenith Mallare, first place." At first, I found it hard to believe. I wondered maybe it's just someone that has the same name of me, but it was no other. Later on, the coaching sessions were held at a building in Baguio City that I wasn't familiar with. On the first day, since my SPA accompanied me, we found the way quite easily. However, on the second day, my teacher had something he needed to attend to at school, so I went first to the venue. At first, I was so relaxed. But just few minutes after, I didn't know where the Jeep was heading to. It took a full stop on one corner and the passengers got out of the vehicle. Not wanting to go further, I also carried myself out and stood there. I didn't know where to go next. While I am not a native from Baguio, the whole place was so unfamiliar. I got lost. I hurriedly chatted my teacher and asked for assistance. Luckily, he knew exactly where I was based from the distinct descriptions I told him. I arrived at the main venue on time. Fast forward to the national conference. As soon as we arrived at Tuguegarao, we went all over the place despite the intense temperature. Cases of COVID-19 were already on the run at that time, so the event authority and the local government was very strict with the guidelines. For the first 2 days, together with my fellow writers and our SPAs, we explored the beauty of the city. I didn't win in the competition, but I was so happy that I met wonderful people and visited a city full of wonders. Chapter 12. 4. On the fourth day, we were still in the city. A friend, the one who was frequently dictated by her mother about her grades, of mine called. She was crying hard that I could barely hear her words clearly. The call lasted for 5 minutes, but I didn't understand a thing. I only knew that she was sobbing intensely. She hanged up and never called back. I tried calling her, but she never answered. I was so anxious. I couldn't bring myself to tell my teacher. My whole body was trembling. I tried calling her mom, but she didn't answer. Luckily, we were able to avail a ticket to go home. It was a night trip and we are expected to arrive the next morning. I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone. I sent her thousands of messages via Messenger, but she wasn't online. My phone battery was already running low. I calmed myself. After a few hours, we arrived at the bus station. I hurriedly asked my teacher to send me home. He suggested us to have coffee first, but even though I wanted to join him, I had to reject. I asked my siblings to meet me and assist me with my luggage. As we reached home, they urged me to rest for a while because I looked exhausted after the long trip, but I insisted to go to school. After resting for a few minutes, I put on my school uniform. Her school was not far from the campus, so I planned to go there. But along the way, she sent me a message, "I'm okay. Don't worry. Talk to you later." I felt relieved she finally responded, so I just went to attend class. At that time, I felt that asking her what happened was not the right thing to do. Meanwhile, I reconnected with my classmates and friends. I gave them the souvenirs I got from Tuguegarao. I happily bonded with them. We chatted for a while. Later that day, as the whole class was watching a film, I received a message. It was the mother of another friend. According to her, they met an accident on their way home and she asked for my assistance. I ran out of class. I hurriedly went to the hospital where they were. I thought I'd find them in the ER, so as I was nearing the hospital, I became more and more worried. However, I met them in front of the hospital. It turned out that Tita was the only one injured and it wasn't that critical. It's just that he wouldn't afford to assist Tita as he had some rush work to do for school. By the time we arrived to their place, it was already past lunch, so I bid goodbye and decided to go home and rest. But just before I could reach home, my friend who called me crying earlier called again. She wanted to meet up. Though I was so hungry, I agreed. I went to our favorite snack house. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her hand was wounded. She was so pale. Her dark circles were literally covering her whole face. As soon as she saw me, she started crying. "I'm tired." Those were the only words she told me that day. I didn't ask her why. I just listened and waited for her to open up. I didn't want to force her. I just hugged her tightly. That night, she sent me a message, a very long message. But to add it all up, she said, "I couldn't say it to you personally, but at that time I called. I hoped you were there with me. I may not always be there with you, but I will always be there for you." I replied. We planned to hang out the next day, but unfortunately, the government put the whole region of Luzon on lockdown to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus. So every day, we message and call each other via Messenger. As much as possible, I want her to feel like she will never be alone in her battles. She has me and of course, God. Speaking of spiritual life, for a moment, I realized that I had been unconsciously turning my back from the Creator. Busy with my school, works, and endeavors, I started missing out in Sunday masses. I seldom asked for His guidance and expressed my gratitude for the blessings He gave me. I can't even remember the last time I prayed and talked to Him. I didn't question or hate Him for the things I lost, but I also didn't value His presence in my life. I took a moment of silence. I went to one corner and just voiced out everything. All my regrets were all coming back to me at that very moment. I just silently cried. I realized how much He loves me, despite the fact that I almost had no time for Him. He never left me alone. He never stopped showering me with His blessings. When times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider this: God has made one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about the future. Ecclesiastes 7 verse 14. Chapter 13. Biggest Educators. Looking back, those biggest regrets were actually the ones who bought me the biggest lessons that shaped me for who I am today. Missing out and struggles to catch up. Yes, I lost a few of the most exciting chapters of childhood, but it taught me that some things are made impossible for a reason. It already happened and I won't be able to turn back time. I realized that the more time we lost, the more we get to value things. At that time, I didn't ask for a miracle to happen for me to go back and experience what I once failed to. I learned to cherish the time I had left to stay in that certain place that sooner or later, I'd definitely leave behind. Anxiety and perfect peace. The main reason I wanted to be always presentable for others is the fact that I was living my life not for myself, but for the sole reason of pleasing them. The regret of doing such brought me to see my self-value. I learned more about myself. I became more aware of what I'm capable of doing. Isolation and overcompetitive. Sometimes, as we are busy trying to achieve our goals, we fail to recognize that we are slowly detaching ourselves from others to the point that we can be so insensitive. Those times that I was gradually being blinded by victory, without realizing, I became less considerate of the ones around me. By the time I realized, I learned that not all battles we encounter are for the sole reason of winning. Some will bring you lessons. Some will connect you with the people you silently long for. And some will guide you to your ultimate success. Overthinking and Misconceptions. Being called out by my teachers on how I changed myself for the worst, at first, I honestly didn't take it as a calling to change for the better. I took it as if they were criticizing me and that what I have now is not enough for them to be proud of me. But then, I realized that their words were God's instrument to put me back on track. And that taught me to trust His plans for me. Friend issues. They say, a person who doesn't trust anybody once trusted someone too much. But with all those friends that I lost and with those that I found, I learned that it doesn't end with betrayal or fear of trusting again. It is a matter of forgiveness, not for the ones that hurt you, but for yourself. Masking up the real you to fit in. Losing a lot of friends, I developed a fear of abandonment. I wanted to join larger circles. I had the belief that the larger the social circle I'd belong to, the lesser chance I would be left alone. Every day, as I didn't want them to see anything that they wouldn't like about me, I always limited my actions. Everything I do was calculated. I pretended and lied when I felt the need to. I became used to it that I didn't realize that I wasn't only lying to them but also to myself. Doing worst things for grades. The worst thing I did that I can never be proud of is not only the fact that I did terrible things to maintain a high grade, but also, I hid in my comfort zone. I didn't want to try out new things and explore because I was afraid that at the end, I would lose the comfort I have now. I chose to do terrible things than just learn to take risks. With this, I realized that my comfort zone is indeed just an illusion, for in fact, I am enclosed in a prison that teaches me not to break free. I realized that doing awful acts to achieve a goal is not only cheating but is also indication that I don't believe in myself. After all, achievement and success feels more rewarding when you know you worked hard for it. Failed to take care of myself. I recognize the value of my health in every aspect in my life. May it be physical, emotional, or mental health, each one affects all. My parents always warned me about my physical health given that I had UTI. I had several absences at school because of my constant illness. Obviously, I missed out to some fun moments as I had to be extra cautious. There are times I did things the doctors and my parents advised me not to. Eating junk foods, for example. Upon knowing, I remember my mother telling me that it's not completely bad to eat such foods. I just have to limit my intake. Your intelligence is of no use if you don't even know how to take care of yourself. Conflicting schedules and not being there to comfort loved ones. Those moments that I didn't have the chance to be there when they needed me, and those days that I was left out due to my personal endeavors, were the moments that I felt the most regretful and guilty. By time, those feelings were replaced with the biggest lesson of properly setting my priorities in life. Chances are, I wouldn't afford to be always there with them. But the best thing I can do is to make time for them and to make them feel through my simplest words and gestures that I will always be there for them. Ignoring spiritual health. Most of the time, I had the feeling that there was something I was missing. It always felt like everything I do is not complete. It was like I was always missing a piece of the puzzle. It took me a long time to realize that it was my spiritual life that kept pulling me back. God helps those who help themselves. I knew that I had to start with myself. With the guidance of people around me, especially my sisters, I slowly found my way. And with His love, I found my missing piece. Of course, it didn't happen overnight. I had to go back to my deepest whys in life for me to fully regain my faith. I had to get over my regrets and treat them as my biggest educators. In the end, I embraced His grace and left myself open for His blessings. Chapter 14. Dear You. Aside from these, I also will be forever grateful for my ever-supportive educators, starting from my dearest parents, friends, families to the dedicated teachers I encountered in my life. Dear Dad, at a young age, thank you for letting me see the world in a different light. Thank you for your unending support. I admit, at first, I hated how you would always miss my recognition days in grade school. Seeing how my classmates had their fathers up front shouting cheerfully for them, I had those feelings of envy up to a point I came to a conclusion that I wished they were my dad. But I tell you, I am forever grateful that you are my dad. Yes, you have your shortcomings, but if I were to be born again, I'd still choose to be your daughter. Because I know that you have your own ways of expressing yourselves to us, and I've come to realize that. Dear Mom, thank you for always being there to bring light to our lives. I am not a perfect kid, I've done mistakes. But thank you for always reminding me of the allowance of mistakes in my life. Dear gorgeous sisters, fastidious yet loving A.T.E. Desiree, perfectionist but optimistic. A.T.E. Cindy, fearless and devoted. A.T.E. Melody and my unbreakable queen, A.T.E. Leo, thank you for always being there ready to back me up. I may not have witnessed all that you've gone through, but I want you to know that you are never alone. We will be here. God will always be there for us. Dear Kuyas, my gutsy eldest brother Randy, my study buddy, Hansel, my travel buddy, Kevin, and music lover, Vincent, thank you for your utmost support. I know how hard it is to express yourselves given that you are leading your own lives with your life partners. Of course, except for you Vincent, you are still young for such things. But I really appreciate that you occasionally find time to connect. I remember being alone at home and Kuya Kevin would visit and play with me during his free time. I was always over the moon, though it rarely happens. Moving in with my siblings after grade school, he always made time to hang out with me and go around the city. Dear grade school, high school teachers, SEA teachers, I wouldn't be able to name all of you, but please know that I am always grateful for your presence in my life. All those jingles that brought me bright mornings, all those adventures and new explorations. I can't assure you that the knowledge I acquired will stay remembered. I promise you that those lessons you made me realize will stay deep in my heart. Dear fellow students, I believe we all came to a point that we carried too much pressure not only on our grades but on our school performance in general. Though I didn't really experience being dictated by my family, I was surrounded by people who somehow made me feel that I always had to be the best. With this, my grades became a big deal in everything. But then, I realized that those numbers weren't the main reason of us attending school. Grades assess my school performance. Yes, indeed. And it is my responsibility to maintain it positive. But what assess my growth are the values and discipline I pick up and apply along the way. Being an achiever, there are times I was blinded, not realizing my feet was off the ground. By the time I saw myself, I was already losing a lot of friends, even my own true self. There, I realized the importance of humility. Let's be humble enough to the people around us. Don't make yourself high and unapproachable to the point that you would always expect people to like everything about you, to adore you. The world does not revolve only on you. There will be someone better than you, and that is okay. Every one of us has our own skill that makes us unique. It is what makes us, us. Dear out-of-school youth batchmates, I know that deep in your heart is a dream yet to be discovered. You may not have been able to continue your studies, but it is not the end. Education starts at home, grows at school, but never ends. It does not revolve merely on academics or in school in general. Somehow, it is a matter of discipline and perseverance. Dear squad of mine, I tell you, you are not the perfect people I wanted to meet in my life, but you are and will always be the best. We don't know for sure if we would still be together in the end, but I want you to know that I am blessed to have you in my life. I know there are times I shut myself from you. With this, I want you to know that it is not because I don't trust you. Maybe it's just that I am still in the process of coming out. I know that you know how hard it is to trust people nowadays. Nevertheless, thank you for everything. Dear everyone that I met in my life, some who left me with precious memories, some standing up front, some cautiously watching me from behind, and some beside me as we walk forward hand in hand. Thank you for making my robbed childhood special. Dear self, if we are able to go back in time, I want you not to go waste your time correcting your mistakes, but to reminisce the lessons that they marked inside of you. I want you to speak to the old me not to tell her all things she would possibly meet in this life, but to remind her that whatever happens, she will never be alone. Also, I hope you know that it's not a bad thing to do anything just to achieve a goal, but be sure that you do it for yourself and not only for others. Samuel Smiles once said, "The battle of life is, in most cases, fought uphill, and to win it without honor. If there were nothing to struggle for, there would be nothing to be achieved." We don't know for sure what tomorrow holds. We may gather more regrets along the way. We may commit more mistakes. We may lose more of our loved ones. But one thing is for sure, God has His great plans for all of us. Let me end this with His word. Blessed is the man that trusts in the Lord, and whose hope the Lord is. For he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, and that spread out her roots by the river, and shall not see when heat comes, but her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. Jeremiah 17 verses 7-8.